In this video, I would like to clarify the distinction between profit and producer surplus. So profit is the gains to the firm from participating in a market. So it's the revenues they bring in minus the opportunity cost of the resources they employ. Producer surplus is the gains from producing specifically. So it's revenues minus variable costs. And the distinction, the difference between the two is fixed costs. Under the assumption we've been making for our introductory class, we said that anytime a cost is not directly going to increase with the amount produced, it must be sunk. So fixed cost for us is sunk. It's not recoverable in the short run. And so that will be the difference between profit and producer surplus. Essentially, the firm has to pay for two types of resources, the resources it uses to produce and the resources it has no choice over paying for at the moment. So in the short run, whether it wants to produce or not, it has to pay the fixed costs, whereas the variable cost is something it can control. So the difference between the two is the fixed cost. If we want to show these variables in a graph, we can assume our typical initial economies of scale followed by this economies of scale. And we're also assuming that this is a price-taking firm, which is why I showed the supply curve as tracing marginal cost. Well, if price in the market is at some level, let's say here, then the firm will produce along its supply, along its marginal cost curve. Let's see if we can identify profit. Well, profit is total revenue minus total cost. The easiest way to think of it here is that profit is quantity times price minus average total cost. Okay, so for every unit produced, we're going to take the difference between the revenue we earn for it, so the price, and the total cost on average. That in this graph is going to be given by this rectangle. Note that what we have here is the average total cost at Q, not at that intersection. So this is our profit in this situation. What about producer surplus? We could show producer surplus in two different ways. We can think of it as either Q times P minus AVC, right? So using the same intuition as for profit, and since producer surplus is price times quantity minus variable cost, where would that be here? Well, we have price minus average variable cost. So then, if this is AVC at that quantity, then producer surplus is price minus AVC times Q. So it's this larger rectangle. We have a second way of showing producer surplus as well, and that will be the area below price and above the supply curve. Why is that? Well, because the supply curve is showing us the minimum price at which the firm would be willing to sell that unit. And so the difference between how much they actually sell it for and how much the minimum at which they'd be willing to sell it is going to give us the net gain, the surplus from selling that particular unit. So if we're adding that over all units sold, that gives us producer surplus, and that, as we've said before, is the area then under the price and above the supply curve. So in our graph here, producer surplus can be seen as this large area, or as this rectangle. So this rectangle and this almost trapezoid-like area are equivalent. They can both be interpreted as giving us producer surplus. Profit is this smaller rectangle. And the difference between them is the fixed cost. That's the average fixed cost, the vertical distance between average total and average variable cost times Q. Note that if all we're given is the supply curve, that's not enough for us to determine profit. That's only enough for us to determine producer surplus.